Alright, so we are starting on page 164, topic 7, transformations of the dependent variable of quadratic functions. So, consider the graph and the table of the function f of x equals x squared. So the graph right here is that graph. F of x equals x squared. That is that graph. If they put negative 2 in here, negative 2 squared is 4, negative 1 squared is 1, 0 squared is 0. That's where they're getting these numbers from. 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4. Okay. Then they plotted those on the graph and they created this right here. Okay. So then it says, consider the following transformation on the dependent variable f of x. So basically what this is saying is, if you took f of x, which is x squared up here, if you put x squared and you added 2, what would happen? What happens if you subtract 2 from it? What if you multiply by 2? What if you divided it by 2? And what if you put a negative in the front? What would happen to this? Okay, so that's basically what a transformation is. Why do you think these are called transformations on the dependent variable? Okay, well, it's the dependent variable because we're talking about what changes are made to the f of x. Okay, so what changes are made on the f of x? Okay, so that's what the transformation is. Does it transform into a different graph? Does it move up? Does it move down? Does it move to the left, to the right? So that's essentially what we're doing in this chapter today. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's complete the following table and see what happens to f of x. So basically what this is saying is, if I have f of x, and remember f of x is currently x squared, and if I put negative 2 squared, I get 4. But what happens if I add 2 to that answer? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this 4 number, and on this problem I'm going to add 2 to it. So 4 plus 2, well, that's easy, that's 6. Okay. Then on the other one, instead of adding 2 to it, I'm going to subtract 2. So I take that 4 and I subtract 2 to that number. Well, 4 minus 2 is 2. Okay. What happens if I have a 1 and I add 2 to it? Well, that's 1 plus 2, which is 3. Okay. 1 minus 2, that's negative 1. 0 plus 2 is 2. 0 minus 2 is negative 2. 1 plus 2 is 3. And then 1 minus 2 is negative 1. 4 plus 2 is 6. And 4 minus 2 is negative 2. Alright. So just to clarify, these numbers are my inputs. And then these are my outputs. Okay. This is graph 1. This is going to be graph 2. And this will be graph 3. Okay. So these are my inputs. All of these numbers here are my inputs. And all the way down are all of my outputs. And again, there's going to be 3 different graphs. One of the graphs we're going to label f of x. The other we're going to label g of x. And the last one we're going to label that h of x. Okay. Let's go ahead and let's choose different colors. So the g of x, we'll put that one as green. And the h of x, we will do that one as purple. Okay. So sketch the graphs of each function on the same coordinate plane as the graph of f of x. So graph 1 has already been done for us. It's already graphed. So let's go ahead and let's do the green graph now. Okay. So that is saying I need to put a dot. My input is negative 2. My output is 6. So negative 2 is over here. And I go all the way up to 6, and that dot is right here. Okay. My next one is negative 1 and 3. So negative 1 and go up to 3 right here. The next one is 0 and 2. So 0 is in the center, 2 is right here. The next one is 1 and 3. So 1 and 3. And the last one is 2 and 6. So 2 and 6. Notice how they get really, really close, but they never touch. So, draw my parabola. And I move that. Okay. Now let's try graph number 3, the purple graph. So once again, my inputs are my x's. My outputs are these numbers on this side over here. So the first one is -2 and 2. So -2 and 2. Okay, so -2 and 2 would be around right here. Okay, the next one is going to be -1 and -1. So -1 and -1 right here. Then we have 0 and -2. So that point is right here. Then I have 1 and -1. So 1 and -1. And last is 2 and -2. So 2 and -2. Sorry, that should be a +2, not a -2. Yeah, because 2 minus 2, I'm sorry, 4 minus 2 would have been 2. Because these right here, I'm just taking this minus the 2, and 4 minus 2 is a +2. Alright, now I'm going to connect my dots. Now notice, the green one went up by 2. The purple one went down by 2. So again, the green one went up by 2. The purple one went down by 2. So that goes to tell you, if you add 2, the graph will move up 2 on the y-axis. Okay. Now, if I were subtracting 2, it would do the opposite. So instead of writing that whole sentence again, I'm just going to say opposite would happen if I subtract. Okay, so if I add 2, it's going to go up 2 on the y-axis. If I subtract 2, it's going to go down 2 on the y-axis. Pretty easy. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's try the try it problem. And I'm going to work on the work with you guys, and then you guys are going to graph it. So complete the table to determine what happens when we multiply f of x by a constant. So now we're going to multiply these numbers. So once again, my x's are called my inputs. These down here are going to be my outputs. Okay, so my inputs and then my outputs. So let's go ahead. On these ones, I'm going to multiply by 2. On these ones, I'm going to multiply by 1/2. And when I multiply by 1/2, that's really just divide by 2. And on this one, I'm just going to add a negative to my answers. So if I'm multiplying by 2 on this one, I'm going to take this number and multiply it by 2. So 4 times 2 is 8. 1 times 2 is 2. 0 times 2, well, that's just going to be 0. 1 times 2 is 2, and 4 times 2 is 8. Okay, so again, I take these numbers and I multiply it by 2. Now on this one, I'm going to multiply it by 1/2. But remember what I said. when I multiply a fraction, I'm really just dividing it by 2. So I take 4 and I divide that by 2. That answers 2. 1 divided by 2 is really just 0.5. 0 divided by 1/2 is just 0, because anything divided by 0 is 0. 1 divided by 1/2, again, 0.5. And 4 divided by 1/2 is going to be 2, because I'm just taking 4 divided by 2. The last one is even easier. All I'm going to do is add a negative to all of these answers here. So this becomes -4, this becomes -1. There's no such thing as a -0, it's just 0, -1, and -4. Okay, once again, you're going to graph these points. So I would graph this red, I would graph this one green, and blue for this one. Okay, once again, these are my inputs. So the first one, I would do -2 and 8. -2 is down here, and 8 is right here. Okay, I'll do this first one. I said I would do that red. I'll do the red one with you guys, and the rest is on you. So the red one would be right here. Then I have -1 and 2. So -1 and 2. 0, 0 is still going to be in the center. 1 and 2. So 1 and 2. 2 and 8. 2 and 8. Okay. So notice when I multiplied it by 2, this graph got skinnier. Okay. It still came from the center, but it got skinnier. Okay. You guys go ahead and graph the rest, and that is it for this video.